Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about half marathon specific workouts and some of the weekly structure that would go into training for a half marathon. So whether you're getting ready for a open half marathon, meaning just the half marathon, which is good enough, or you're doing a half Ironman, most of this will be applicable to you. Some of the half Ironman athletes are going to want to pay attention at the end because I got some comments on that. So the fastest people in the world are running just over an hour for a half marathon, which puts them running right at their threshold for most of the race, and then over their threshold pace for the last 5 or 6 minutes of the race. Most other people in the world are not going to be running that fast. So a very good amateur time is 115, 120 for a guy and 125, 130 for a gal. But the majority of the population is going to be 130, 150, 210, 2.5 hours. So it's important to know either your current threshold pace, meaning what you can run for an hour at maximum 1 hour ability, or know your 10K time. So the reason you need to know this is because a lot of the half marathon specific workouts are going to be run at half marathon pace. So a couple examples. If you can run 6 minute pace for a 10K, your half marathon pace is about 6:15, plus or minus a tiny bit. If you can run 7 minutes for a 10K, your half marathon pace is about a 7:20. And you can adjust upwards from there. So 8 minutes would be a 8:25. 9 minutes might be closer to a 9:30 for the half marathon. The slower you go, and I'm not criticizing anybody who's slow out there, the slower you are, the more gap there's going to be between your 10K time and your half marathon time because of the amount of time you will be on your feet. So that being said, half marathon training, you do want to start to look at how you can nudge up your total weekly mileage. What we don't want to do is do a 3 mile on Tuesday, a 4 mile on Thursday, and a 10 mile on Saturday or Sunday. If you put too much of your weekly volume into the one long run, you do run a risk of injury because you're just not very accustomed to going that length. So it's more ideal if you can run 4 or 5 times a week. Those fourth and fifth runs don't have to be very far, but going back to the idea of time on our feet or total mileage, 2, 3, 4 easy miles on those workouts is going to be very helpful in your goal to have a good half marathon time. The key workout for a half marathon is going to be a relatively long run with repeats at half marathon pace. And I need a caveat here. If you wind up doing a 10 or 11 mile half marathon interval workout, that may not be the week to also do a tempo long run. Okay, so you could still do your long run, but you want to do that long run at easy pace. That's one caveat. The second caveat is that there is a spot for also doing an interval workout that's shorter, like repetition pace, in this same week, but you would never want to do 3 of those in the same week, meaning you wouldn't want to do like 400s at 5K pace, mile repeats at half marathon pace, and then also a tempo long run, right? So we wouldn't want to put those all in one week because that increases your workload, your training stress, and increases your chances for injury. So back to the workout, half marathon workout. This could be a couple miles, easy warm up, do some plyometrics or light stretching, active stretching, not static stretching. And then we want to know that what our half marathon pace is and do things like 4 by 2 miles at half marathon pace with only 2 or 3 minutes recovery in between those intervals. So it's short interval recovery, long training interval or long work interval. And if you need to start at 3 by 2 miles, that's fine. But ultimately, you would want to work up to where you're doing 5 by 2 miles or something like 3 by 3 miles at half marathon pace, only slightly faster because we need to dial this in. You need to feel comfortable when you're running kind of hard, right? It needs to be very efficient, and you need to feel like you can flow at that pace because you're going to have to run it for an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever it might be. If you need to run on a not on a track, and so you're just going by your watch, you can just go by time as well. Know your approximate mileage time, and then if it's 7 minutes, let's say you run for 21 minutes if you're doing a 3 mile repeat. Although if you have a watch, you should be able to look down and see what the mileage is at. So you can also do things like 8 or 9 or 10 by 1 mile at half marathon pace, again with very short recoveries, maybe a minute, and if you're at the higher end of fitness, maybe only 30 seconds where you stop, you have a drink of water, you walk in a circle for 15 seconds, and then you go again because we're really dialing in. Now that would be sort of getting very close to the race, but that is a very good workout. You can do shorter intervals. So this would be a separate session. I want you to view these as two separate sessions. One is your specific half marathon interval training. The next one is back to the 5K, 10K type interval training. Again, caveat, if you're doing both of those in a week, your long run should be easy that week, right? You can see the video with 5K, 10K workouts, and you can work that into your cycle. If you're a low mileage runner, I would not do half marathon intervals and repetition intervals in the same week. I would break those up week to week. So alternate those, right? One week, you're going to do long half marathon intervals. The next week, you're going to do the shorter 400, 800s kind of stuff at your 5K or 10K pace. And frankly, those are helpful because if you can increase your 5K, 10K speed, it's going to flow over to your half marathon speed. The third workout is your long run. Now, you'll see a lot of guides about what your long run pace should be, but if you've already done a pace interval run at half marathon pace in that week, your long run should just be easy, steady. And this easy, steady pace is not super slow unless you're really beat up. That's okay. I do a lot of my long runs at a very slow pace because I'm tired. But this pace is about a minute to a minute and a half slower than your 10K race pace. So I'm going to say that again. If you can run a 6 minute 10K pace, then your easy long run, easy steady long run should be in the 7 to 7:30 pace after you warm up. Now, again, if you're tired, it's okay to run slower than that. But if we're really training for a half marathon, we're trying to get good at it. We want to be working even in our steady efforts, right? That should be kind of a zone 2 if you're looking at your heart rates. Another way to approach the long run. Now, in this week, I would not do a half marathon 10 by 1 mile kind of week, right? I would maybe do some shorter intervals on Tuesday, 2 or 3 miles of short intervals. And then on the weekend run, this is where you could do things like progression run, where you do 30 minutes easy, 30 minutes at that steady pace we were just talking about, and then 30 minutes or so at your half marathon pace. So you're getting faster throughout the run. You can also do up and downs. That's one way of saying like a mile at or slightly faster than your half marathon goal, and then a mile that's a little slower than your marathon goal. Not all the way down to that steady pace though. So we're talking, again, if I'm using the 6 minute miler for the 10K, so he or she can run 6:15-ish for a half marathon. So they want to run 6:15, 6:25, or 6:10, 6:35, somewhere in that range. It's a slight change of pace, but if you're in really good shape, you will feel the recovery on the slower effort, even though it's not slow. You could do that like four-ish times in a long run, so that would give you 8 miles of work, 2 or 3 mile warm up, 1 or 2 mile cool down, gets you to 12 or 13 miles there. There's also a place for doing over distance running with half marathon training. That would be where you run intentionally 14 or 15 or 16 miles. That's getting pretty far. 14 I think is good. 15 if you're super fit, that's fine. And a lot of this would just be at that steady aerobic effort, which in this case for a 6 minute 10K guy would be 7 to 7:30 pace. barring the warm up. It's okay to go really, really slow in the warm up. The older you are, the more time you're probably going to need to warm up. So that's all I really have on half marathon training as far as it goes for open half marathons. For you Ironman, half Ironman athletes, you've got a lot of other workouts going on, right? So the 4 or 5 times a week may not be realistic for you. So you need to be judicious in your application of the short intervals, the half marathon specific intervals, and any hard running that you do. So your best bet if you're training for a half Ironman is to do the plyometric workout that I discussed in the 5K, 10K session, the some half marathon intervals, and then just a steady aerobic long run. That would be my approach, and you would see that if you're working with me as an athlete. It's okay to alternate the shorter intervals in there at maybe every 2 or 3 weeks, but because you're looking at a 4, 5, 6 hour event, you're really needing to focus on the aerobic conditioning, right? We need to be as aerobically fit as possible in order to go pretty hard for such a long time. So this is the 5K, 10K workout. This is us. Thanks for checking in. Leave a like and a comment. That'd be great. See you next time. Bye.